For coming up. We've got a great session. We're going to be talking about a case study, building a unified digital data and technology ecosystem, the leadership blueprint for global CX excellence. Stefany, they're going to do their interview or introductions, but Stefany, Jose, and Hassan is back up. So I'll let you take it from here.
Right. Thank you very much. This is going to be a highly interactive session. We would like you to participate in it as well. Ladies and gentlemen, we are introducing Stefany Singh Ratkovic. She's the Global Director at RWDI. And with her is Jose. I forgot your last name, sorry.
Castro.
Jose Israel Castro, and he is the Regional Manager, North America at FaceFeed. So if you could just introduce yourselves to the audiences.
So yes, hi everybody, my name is Stefany Singh. I'm the Global Director for Digital and Data Strategy at RWDI. It's a global engineering consulting firm focused on environmental sustainability and how buildings and structure fit into our environment.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm Jose Israel Castro. I'm a Digital Identity Solution Manager for North America and Central America. We provide end-to-end industry solutions with multi-biometric and fraud prevention.
All right.
Our presence is more in Europe and Latin America, and now we're expanding to Canada through the north.
All right. Thank you very much, guys, for being here. So let's start with the big picture. So I would like to ask you both, in your context, what does unified digital data and technology actually means in terms of your company ecosystem?
Yeah, so within global engineering, it can be very siloed because of the different types of engineering specialties that exist. So when it comes to what we mean by unifying, it's really how do we take all of these technology, artificial intelligence, and transformation concepts and make sure that we actually have sort of a unified roadmap of where the priorities are for the organization, and if they're especially global in scale or something that we would like to scale that came out of a local or a regional capability, that we have clear line of sight and a plan on how to do that. The challenge when you work with a global organization is you can't centralize everything because then you slow the whole operation down. So it's trying to find the right balance between taking really critical strategic ideas that we feel are going to help better deliver value for the organization and making sure that those things are understood across the organization.
All right, and Jose, in your company?
Yeah, from the digital identity perspective, unification comes from consolidation and not only integration. And that means that the digital identity is part of a process that not only during the onboarding, but have to be across all over the, have to be across all over the channels and all over the transactions, which means it's not only an onboarding process, but it's a customer journey in order to define the process of nice, our smooth and secure digital identity processes.
So take me through the customer journey. When you start, for example, when the customer comes to your website, what's the customer journey like?
Yeah, the idea is to have an anchor with the digital identity for all the customers so they can have the same experience across the channels. What we provide is a digital identity platform that orchestrated all the digital identification across all channels. So the customer has the same experience and you don't have to request authentication and every time at the moment, but only when the risk comes up. That's the difference.
Okay. All right. And Stefany, you talked about silos. Do silos still remain one of the biggest challenges in the industry right now?
Yeah, I think so. I think it exists still a little bit everywhere. But I will say in engineering organizations, this is a really big problem. Engineers are really, really, really smart. They're really great at tinkering. They're very familiar with R and Python. So they are able to build a lot of algorithms themselves, a lot of models themselves. It's what they do. And so usually once they've built something, they're very attached to it. So trying to get them to move that from a local hard drive into a centralized data tech stack can be a little bit challenging. And also getting them to align to data standards can be a little bit challenging because it's their own little special recipe technically that they've come up with for their models. So yeah, it's breaking that down can be a bit challenging
Yeah,
for
nothing
sure.
beats loving your own baby, right?
Yes.
So how can organizations turn data into real business value?
So I think the first thing is, one of the challenges that we do have in this type of environment is the level of tinkering that goes on. So is everything we create of value to the customer? Probably not. And so one of the key things that we really have to look at is what are the key strategic outcomes that we're looking for? So this is a consulting firm. The customer experience is really happening through the consultant or how that lead was generated. So if we're looking to grow acquisition, that's one type of value the organization might have. But the other value could be operational efficiency. Another value might be the speed at which a consultant could get back to a customer with a finalized report, because some of these things can take a long time, but obviously with AI and automation, we can look at things that will speed up the report process, and that will condense time. So that really helps with the customer experience on the other side.
Okay, and at your end, Jose, how do you handle that?
Sure. In our case, we have built what we call digital trust layer, so we can share information between the channels. And this digital trust layer provides an orchestrator that uses the digital identity anchor on all of the channels. For that, we have created what we call 3 levels of security. And those 3 levels of security are based first on prevent the identity theft. The identity theft is account takeover. Somebody's taking your information and logging into your account. Also using fake documents to do onboarding with your information. And the second level provides the what we call the behavior biometrics. Now, with this, we guarantee not only a secure journey with the same customer experience, because we don't need to ask the customers authentication at every moment. We can track their behavior, and our technology is able to read more than 3,000 signals from your device, your behavior, your geolocation, and different aspects that we can track on. And the third one, that was based on what we call the unauthorized fraud. And for the authorized fraud, that's the scams, the extortion. The customers, they do the transaction, so there's no way that you can refuse it. They did the transaction and this thing. Now, we provide AI solutions that is able to read and classify the different type of accounts and make sure that the experience and the data is crossing across all channels, either physical channels or the digital channel for us.
All right. So where you guys see real value from AI today? If I start from you, Jose, the real value from AI today in terms of how AI is adding value to what you do.
And we use AI to combat AI, to fight AI.
Yeah.
In this case, we provided a technology to identify when a face is a video injection attack created by AI. We use AI also to identify that the document is not a real document; it's a fake document. It's a synthetic ID. So we leverage all this information to create what we call a dynamic profile of customers, and also make sure that we can prevent fraud before it occurs.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say, so within the engineering space, we work with what's called computational fluid dynamic software. This is physics software. And traditionally, to develop the software behind this is really quite complicated, as you can imagine. It takes years and years of data gathering from all the building structures or environmental data collections that a firm like this would have. And there's different types of data collections. There's microclimate, snowdrift, wind tunneling, acoustics. I could continue naming the different variations of physics data that gets collected. And so when you have that kind of data, it's very hard sometimes to see if there's any relationship between any of the data sets, because they're being collected for a very specific reason, for a very specific purpose. And so what we're really seeing is that within the computational fluid dynamic space, is how we can use AI to actually help calibrate and bring new models. And so we ourselves are training the data with the data collection that we do have, and in some cases it's helping us predict outcomes for other algorithms and for other structures. So right now we have a proof of concept, which is around cladding and weight-bearing types of activities. And so it seems to be performing pretty well. We have some very rigorous things that we have to meet from a regulatory perspective in terms of accuracy before we start allowing our consultants to use the software more in a more scalable way. But I would say before AI, trying to develop a model for one specific area of engineering and for physics would have taken years. So this is where the value is for us. It's scary for engineers, as you can imagine. This is what they're born to do. But it's really also helping the engineers learn how to partner with AI and not see this as a job threat, but a way to make them more efficient.
So you talked about training the data. So which data you use to train your data? Is it the client's data you're talking about or direct customers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a tricky one. So it depends who you ask.
That's the hook.
So in some cases, so we are not necessarily an organization that works with the client direct. So this might be a builder or government direct. We tend to be a subcontractor of an architectural firm or a construction firm. So in general, we're typically asked to come in and do something very specific. So an example I can share is like with the Sky Dome. It is the first retractable roof on a sports complex ever in the world. That was created by this particular organization. So they come in and do very niche things. They also worked on the Burj Khalifa and Mecca. So these kinds of requests, they're so unique that it does become a little challenging on who owns the data. Some of it's publicly available because it would have been as a result of the building structure being built. Some of it might be captured through the architectural firm or the construction firm, but some of it we have to actually physically go out and do some measurements and field testing and things like that as we're collecting the data. So it probably is a blend of three. I would say we try to keep it a little bit more closely to the data that we are collecting and publicly available data. And then with permission, we can sometimes use client data. Yeah.
And on the contrary, you deal with personal data of people, right? Their biometrics. Would you like to speak to that?
Yeah. What we do is we create a profile for the customer based on the patterns. And based on those patterns, we're able to detect, from the banking perspective, or financial services, we are able to detect the KYC, KYB, and then collect all of this information to work on the KYT, know your transactions, and also KYAC, which is know your account. But in the meantime, all of this process is circled by the know your user. So we cover the whole circle of authentication during the whole journey, the complete journey of the customers. So all this data becomes signals that we are able to detect, more than 3,000 signals to detect about the behavior and the patterns of the customer to build what we call a dynamic profile.
So this is a very sensitive data that you deal with, right? Mm-hmm. So, and in Canada, data protection laws are very, very strict. So I think Pipeda is one of the companies that really take care of that. So how do you, how Pipeda works for you guys? Or what's the connection between you and the data that you collect?
Data for us is just a bridge. We are GDPR compliant, so we are not able to store any sensitive or biometric information from our customers. All of the information is transferred to the application, either app, web, or digital or physical channel from our customer. So we just provide the biometric engine and the APIs and the SDK to identify and detect and share signals to the application. So we don't, with all the sensitive information, to be compliant with Pipeda and FinTrack, we don't store any of those information. It's all signals that we return to the application of our customers so they can take actions. For instance, an account takeover, we send a signal that it's an account takeover, so they can create their own rules to drop off the sessions, in case of that. So the customers is always governing their own rules for any information.
Right. And let's bring technology and integration. Like if you talk about what's been the hardest part of integrating legacy systems with modern platforms.
I think this is a whole summit all by itself. Yeah, I think for an organization that sits in the architectural, engineering, and construction space, this is really challenging because we're not necessarily dealing with a workforce that would have traditionally collected data the way that we understand it, right? So we've got a lot of boots on the ground and paper drawings and blueprints and things like that we would be considering in terms of data, like geospatial data, things like that. It would also depend on, we do a lot of mergers and acquisitions as well, so we've got all these different organizations that would have collected their data in a very different way using different systems. So the big challenge that we do have is around that technology alignment. We, a couple of years ago, became a Microsoft shop, so that is kind of like one big decision the organization was able to make. It wasn't easy getting there because, again, when you're dealing with people who can create their own software and software that we sell to clients, this is not an easy negotiation table. This is a very tough negotiation table. And so we really talk about what are the key things when we're thinking about technology governance. Where is it necessary that we have a centralized data stack? One of the conversations we had as examples with our ERP. So our ERP has its own centralized data stack, obviously Microsoft-based, and we really had a lot of issues with ERP adoption. It was rolled out by a different team, and the change management and adoption program wasn't the strongest. So there's a lot of very strong feelings about using the ERP, as I'm sure many of us have experienced. And so when we talked about a data technology stack, we've had a lot of conversations around, do we just use the centralized data tech stack that was already created for the ERP, or should we actually just create a secondary stack for what we want to do? The ultimate decision is that we will create a secondary stack, because one of the things we really understand is data trust. So if users are not trusting the data that's in the system, therefore they're not using it, we want to be really cognizant that if we take more complex data, like physics data, and we're starting to centralize that our users, our employees understand that it is a separate technology stack, and we can use different ways to gather trust on how we're collecting that data and storing the data.
Great, and so Jose, what does invisible security look like in a best-in-class digital experience, if you speak to that?
I'm sorry?
Oh, okay. What does invisible security, for example, the kind of security you provide, what does it look like for the customer at the end of the day?
Well, in our case, most of our challenges are based on the compliance regulations. So security is one of our key anchors for the digital identity for our customers. So we keep continuously evaluating risks based on the behavior of the account or the user, and in this process we are able to detect and raise any risks, and also hopefully comply with one single biometric engine, comply as a global company with all the regulations worldwide. That means that we need to have a certain restrictions, compliance, data, and regulations for the different type of documents and authentications journeys, and reporting for the regulators also. We comply with all that, and then we analyze those signals as the data that we can analyze and provide a pattern for our customer.
Do you experience any friction or any issues with the process when you comply the data?
Not in this case. One of the, let's say, competitive advantage from our solution is that we provide what we call passive liveness, which means there is no frictions for the customers. You don't have to move your head or do any challenges, because our solution is using AI to detect that you're a live person. Also detect that you're not a video injected by AI. The fraudster now, they're doing video injection created by AI. There's different type of fraud, and new vectors are now pushed by the increasing of using AI. So our solution is able to detect and anticipate to those type of fraud based on the analytics and the evaluation that we did.
All right. And Stefany, how has unifying your ecosystem changed the experience for your end user?
Yeah, so again, in consulting firms, it's always a little different, right? This is a big topic in all consulting firms. It doesn't even matter that we're engineering. You know, at the end of the day, we want the consultants to be the face of the organization. We want the consultants to be the one to be providing that ultimate customer experience. So when we think about that customer journey, we really look at it through the lens of what will produce the least amount of friction for the consultant, because that allows us to ensure that the client has the least amount of friction. So the things that we really looked at in terms of making decisions around what are some key issues was really trying to identify what the consultants find to be their biggest challenge. Some of the key things that arrived were really kind of simple, to be honest. So things like trying to find previous studies that might have been done in a similar topic or a similar geography, and trying to find those previous reports so that they can actually take a look, historical data, and see if there's any kind of references or similarities to the reports that they're doing today. This is incredibly difficult if you think about the fact that we do really bespoke work, and that's really interesting about our customer journey and customer experience. It's not a standard experience, so we can't even create one simplified customer journey because it depends how the work comes in. Sometimes it's coming in from a relationship, sometimes it's through a contractor who knew us before, sometimes it's just the global reputation of the organization. So there isn't really a standard way to deal with that, and there isn't any standard building. If you really think about the world in general, there's no two really prolific buildings that are exactly the same. So it does make the process part of things, that operational repetitiveness, really, really difficult for us. So we have to look at those friction points for the consultant, and that included, like I said, how can they find and surface previous reports for previous data for similar work that they're doing? Also, how can we maybe template some of the reporting and feed that into an automation workflow? So rather than them trying to draft 35 different reports for 35 different clients, they're now reviewing that report. And this is really important as well in terms of developing junior engineers. This is also a concern in the engineering field. We're seeing a lot of work slop, to be honest, really that high dependency on large language models and Gen AI to spit out the answers and the results. So we have a really interesting tension going on inside of the organization about even enabling report automation, because how does a junior engineer actually learn if we're going to just produce the report for them and then it's going to get scanned by a senior engineer? So we have come up with ways to try to work that through, because that does lead into the customer experience, right? Work slop means a sloppy report to the client. A frustrated consultant means frustrated interactions with the client. And so we're really looking at those operational components. So trying to bring that all together, I think the unification around that has to be around where can we find repetitiveness? And if we can't find repetitiveness, what can we look at and say, okay, this is unique enough and there's enough volume of work that's happening in this particular area that we should consider doing these types of automations or use of AI in these ways so that it can expedite and make the experience better for the consultant.
If I may add to your point, there's capabilities for geolocation, and you can create your own rules based on the location, and that some countries are starting to regulate. This is what they call inferential geolocation, that you need to know where your customers is located at the time of the onboarding, at the time of the transaction, so you can work on that to your consulting thing and based with the technology providing that capabilities.
Sure. And would you like to talk about, like, in 3 to 5 years, what will define leaders in unified digital ecosystem?
Sorry, I didn't get you.
So what will define leaders in the unified digital ecosystem in 3 to 5 years in the future?
Yeah, one of the 3 to 5 years companies that are going to be successful are those that consider the digital identity part of the trust, not only the onboarding process, not only but also as a journey process during the whole process, so the customers will be able to see my organization knows me. If you are aware of those risk patterns, then you can avoid the customers drop off, create a smooth customer experience, and avoid risk, and also avoid the capacity. So the fraudsters are doing incredible things with the technology now. They're so creative. They have been able to create an employment agency, capture people, and use that information from the people to create one Mule's account, and then this is $745 million just in fraud related to Molly Mule's account last year, only in Canada. If you consider that, if you see how can we be preventive according to the PSD3 regulations that can make sure that you comply with the transparency, the reimbursing the funds to the customers, and also the co-responsibility that it requires, then some organizations might be out of business if they don't comply with that. No? So knowing the leapfrog that the fraudster have been reaching, this should be prevented on that for the next 2 or 3 years. Also, agentic AI, the organizations have to be ready. Already Mastercard launched their travel agency, agentic AI, to work with the customers' attention based on the other agents. And this is interesting. It's going to be interesting in that arena.
Great. And Stefany, very quickly, how does the future look like in your industry?
I'm going to give a little bit of a controversial answer. So I think there's two types of leaders. There's organizational, organizations that we see as leaders, and then the leaders as the people in the organization. I actually think, there's a huge nostalgia in the customer experience for human-to-human connection. And so I think it's very easy to get caught up with all the really cool and latest technology that exists and how it can make our lives more efficient. And we know that a lot of AI implementations are not necessarily seeing that organizational return on investment. So I actually think that customer experience is going to become an even greater differentiator over time on what makes an organization super successful. If you think about the fact that you've got all of this data that's coming in, especially when you think about LLMs, and this is all going to become kind of like mediocre, and everything that's going to get spit out is going to kind of be a little bit beige, right? Because it's going to be a blend of all of this data. And so the real creativity is going to have to come from people, and how we actually make people feel. And we know right now, the statistics are telling us that there's huge frustration with customer interaction and chatbots and telephones, and they don't want to talk to these things. If it's a simple do-it-yourself kind of thing, they don't want to get on a phone. They'd love a chatbot to answer that. But for the most part, when they're dealing with more complex things, they don't want to go through these rigmaroles. They want Stefany on the phone, caring about their problem and helping them solve it. So I do think that's something that organizations need to think a little bit more critically for, and being really a lot more thoughtful around when we're thinking about customer interaction, what is the true need for artificial intelligence interaction? So I think that's on the organizational, leadership. Where do we see lead organizations going? When it comes to people leaders, I think that it goes back to the same sort of premise. We have younger and younger talent coming into organizations that lack people skills, that lack connection skills, that lack the ability to understand office cues, work environment cues. And so as much as we love, work from home and remote work, these are really, really detrimental things that people in their early 20s and 30s are experiencing as they enter into the workforce. So I believe that organizations that are going to develop strong leaders are going to be the ones who can actually help these new people coming into an organization understand the value of human interaction, understand how to connect with people, understand how to deal with upset people, emotional intelligence, and how to actually solve real problems using conversation. I think that'll develop really strong leaders for tomorrow, because I do worry with what I'm seeing today.
Great, thank you very much, Jose and Stefany. So I'd like to open the floor. If there's any questions, anyone wants to ask any question, please go ahead. So everything is very well explained, I guess. All right, thank you very much, Stefany, and thank you very much, Jose.
Thank you so much.
For being here.
Thank you so much for having us.
Just enjoy the rest of the CX.
Thank you.